When I have more than two programs, then it is known as multiple programs. Suppose if I want to switch from runnable to running, then what I want to do? I want to call run method. A new thread which is going to start its new state is known as new. When I have more than two threads and I want to know the priority of the thread, then I'm going to call get priority. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on multi-threading in Java. I'm your Revati ma'am, faculty from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, in my last session, I started with how I can able to create my own package, what are the steps I need to follow, and how can I compile the package and how can I run the package. So what is package exactly? It's nothing but user can able to create their own package with the help of package keyword, and this package includes user defined classes as well as user defined method, and whenever I want those package, then I can able to export those package in my program. Along with that, I have discussed how to compile Java package and how to run Java package and how I can able to access the package. So all those things I have discussed in my last session. But in my today's session, I'm going to deal with multi-threading, in that thread in Java and runnable interface. So dear student, before going to start my today's session, let me to tell what is multi-thread. So dear student, thread is nothing but lightweight process. So then what is process? For example, say I have prg1.java program. Think that I'm going to run this program and I'm going to compile this program. And when this program is under the execution, then it is known as process. So what is process? It's nothing but the program under execution. Then what is lightweight process? So dear student, here multi-threading is nothing but the lightweight process. And a thread is nothing but the program under the execution. Now, dear student, if I consider Java program, multi-threading in Java is a process of executing multiple threads simultaneously. So, dear student, I came to know that what is thread. So, what is thread? It is nothing but the lightweight process. In the sense, it is nothing but the program in execution. And when I have more than two programs, then it is known as multiple programs. And the simultaneous execution of multiple programs are known as multi-threads. A thread is a lightweight sub-process, the smallest unit of processing. So dear student, if I consider PRG1, okay, it's a process, in the sense program in execution, and it is a smallest unit of processing, in the sense execution. Multiprocessing and multi-threading both are used to achieve multitasking. So what is multitasking? So dear student, when I'm listening to the music, at the same time I'm going to execute the program. So I'm going to perform more than two tasks simultaneously, and to achieve multitasking we are going to have multi-threading as well as multi-processing. So a thread is a lightweight sub-process or the smallest unit of processing, and it is separate path of execution. So what is thread? It is nothing but the lightweight process or program in execution. So we use multi-threading than multi-processing. So dear student, most of the time we are going to use multi-threading more than multi-processing, because if I use thread, then I can able to use shared memory area. In the sense, if I consider computer memory, we are going to have the shared memory, and all the threads are able to use shared memory resources. They do not allocate separate memory area. In the sense, if I consider multiprocessing, for each processing we require different memory allocation. But if I consider multi-threading, we can able to use shared memory location to run more than 2 threads or process simultaneously. So Java multithreading is most commonly used in games and animation. So dear student, if I consider games as well as animation, then we may come across multi-threading. Now, a thread is a lightweight sub-process, and it's nothing but the smallest unit of processing, and each thread is independent. In the sense, if I consider this diagram, see here, I have thread 1, I have thread 2, I have thread 3, and I have thread 2 and thread 3. And if I consider this diagram, how many processes I have? I have 3 processes, and in each process I have one or more than one process. Now, see here, think that this is the shared memory. Okay, now all these processes are going to use the shared memory. In the sense, from process 3, it's going to execute for a certain time, and it's going to switch to process 1, and in process 1 this T1 is going to execute for a certain time, and it's going to switch to process 2, and from process 2 this T2 is executing for certain time. After that, it's going to switch to process 3. So in shared memory, we can able to run, or we can able to use more than 2 processors. So dear student, because of these advantages, we are going to use multi-thread in the field of games as well as animation. So threads are independent if there occurs exception in one thread that does not affect to another thread. So dear student, if I consider this process, in each process we are having some thread. Okay, if I consider process 1, I have 3 threads, and each thread is independent. In the sense, it's not going to depend on other thread. For example, if there is any error in thread 1, then it does not affect to thread 2 and thread 3. Now, dear student, let me to consider the life cycle of a thread. So, dear student, a thread goes through various stages in its life cycle. So, dear student, if I consider thread, each thread must cross with all the life cycle. For example, if I consider human being, each human being want to cross all the life cycles. For example, first it is baby, then it is toddler. In the sense, after 3 to 6 it is toddler, then child, then teenager, adult, old age. So these are the life cycle of human being. Similarly, if I consider thread, here also we are going to have the life cycle. So the newly created thread is known as new, and when I call start method, then it is going to enter into the runnable. So what are the stages? New, runnable, running, wait and dead. So dear student, suppose if I want to switch from runnable to running, then what I want to do? I want to call run method. Okay, and when I call run method, the thread is entering into running state. And from the running state, if I want to end the execution of the thread, then I am going to call exit. Or if I want to wait, okay, if I want to wait to other thread to complete, then I'm going to call sleep and wait method. So what are the life cycle of a thread? That is new, runnable, running, waiting as well as dead. So dear student, from the examination point of view, this topic is very, very important, and this is the sure question under this topic. Now see here, what is new? A newly born baby. That is nothing but a newly born thread. A new thread begins its life cycle in the new state. So a new thread which is going to start its new state is known as new. Then what is runnable? After calling start method, thread enters into runnable state. So after a newly born thread is started, then that becomes runnable. Now I want to switch from runnable to running, then what I want to do? I want to call run method. See, I'm going to have another state called waiting. A thread transition to the wait state, in the sense, if the thread enters into wait state, then what is the meaning? That indicates that some other thread want to complete its job. So it's going to enter into the waiting state. So a thread transition back to the runnable state only when another thread signals that waiting thread to continue executing. Then timed wait. In the sense, while waiting, I'm going to specify particular time, in the sense for 10 second or 20 second, the particular thread want to suspend its execution. So a thread in this state transmission back to the runnable state when the time interval expires or when the event it is waiting for the occurs. So the thread is going to move back to runnable state when the specified time interval get expired. So terminated or dead. A runnable thread enters the terminated state when it completes the task, in the sense when the thread is going to terminate when it completes its work or its job, then it enters into the dead state. So dear student, what are the states of a thread? That is nothing but what are the life cycle of a thread? That is new, runnable, running, wait as well as dead. Now dear student, how to create thread in Java? So dear student, till now we were discussing about what is thread, the meaning of thread and the life cycle of thread. But how we can able to create thread That is in two ways. One is by extending thread class and by using runnable interface. That is nothing but by using extending thread class. Okay. So we are going to use previous thread class, or we can able to implement runnable interface. So thread can be created in two ways. One is by extending thread class, another one is implementing runnable interface. So dear student, this is the example for how we can able to extend thread class. Thread class provides constructors and methods. So dear student, if I consider built-in thread class, then it provides methods, classes, constructors as well as method to create thread and perform different kinds of operation. So dear student, thread class extends object class and implements runnable. So dear student, what I want to do in my program, I want to extend the thread class. So this is the simple program. So dear student, my class is multi, okay, and I'm going to use thread class. So it is extends. In this, I'm going to have the method called run, and I'm going to display the message that is thread is running. Now see here, I'm going to have public static void main, and see here, I'm going to create the object of the class multi, and what's my object name? That is T1. Now with the help of T1, I'm going to invoke start method. Okay, now when I call start method, what's going to happen? The newly created thread enters into the runnable state. Now, from runnable state to running state, I want to switch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call the run method. And when I call the run method, the thread is going to switch from runnable state to running. So this is the way I can able to extend thread class in my program. Now dear student, I'm going to have runnable interface. So the runnable interface should be implemented by any class whose instances are intended to executed by a thread. In the sense, I can able to use runnable class which can be implemented by any class. So runnable interface have only one method, that is run. In the sense, if I go with runnable interface to create a thread, then I can have only one method, that is run. Now dear student, let me to consider what is runnable interface. So dear student, first I am going to have starting a thread. In the sense, by using runnable interface, if I want to start a thread, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to call a method called start. So dear student, initially if I consider thread is going to have the new state. Okay, now I want to switch from new to runnable, then I'm going to call start method. So the start method of thread class is used to start a newly created thread. Then what is new thread starts? The method moves from new state to runnable. When the thread gets a chance to execute, in the sense all these are in the queue. Think that I have thread 1, I have thread 2 and I have thread 3. And all these threads are placed in the queue. Okay, and when they get the chance, they are going to execute. So when the thread gets a chance to execute, it targets run method to run. In the sense, when the thread gets a chance to execute, then it's going to call run method to enter into the running state. So this is the example I'm going to have here. Class, and my class name is Mulithreading, and I'm going to use Runnable interface. So it is a interface. If it is interface, then which keyword I want to use? That is nothing but the implements. And inside this, I'm going to have a method called run. And what is the output? Thread is running. And see here, I'm going to have the main program. Here I'm going to create a object of the type class. So Mulithreading. Now I want to create new thread. For that I'm going to use thread class. So thread is nothing but the class, and T1 is nothing but the object. And what is the input to this thread class? That is nothing but the class name M1. And thread runnable is nothing but the interface name, and R is nothing but the object. So here, if I go with thread, it's nothing but the thread class constructor. Then I'm going to call the method start in order to enter the thread into running, or then I'm going to call t1.start. In the sense, if I want to enter the new thread into runnable state, then I'm going to call start method. Suppose if I want to enter the thread into runnable to running, then I'm going to call run method. So dear student, what are the commonly used thread methods? That is run. Run in the sense what? It's used to run the thread. It's a method used to run the thread. And start, it's mainly used to start the execution of the thread. Then join. Okay, join. When I call join, it waits for a thread to die. Now, get priority. So dear student, when I have more than two threads and I want to know the priority of the thread, then I'm going to call get priority. And in some situation, if I want to set the priority for each thread, then I can able to call set priority. And if I want to know the thread ID, then I can use get ID. So it returns the ID of the thread. So dear student, in my today's class, I started with what is thread. Along with that, I have discussed the different life cycle of a thread. Along with that, how I can able to create a thread by using two methods, that is by using thread class and by using runnable interface. Along with that, I have discussed some of the thread methods. Anyway, dear student, in my next session, I'm going to deal with exception handling. Along with that, I'm going to deal with some of the keywords that is going to support exception handling, and Java try and catch block. Finally, the common scenarios of execution, and Java, that is multiple Java catch block, as well as finally. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with the new topic, that is exception handling. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.